Good to see you. Welcome back. This is Global News Morning. Happy to say spring has sprung, but with that, some spring maintenance work with our houses, especially with snow and the snow melt. Please join me in welcoming Matt Lee, and he's got some tips for us. Good morning, Matt. How are things?
Oh, I'm great. Good morning. Thank you.
Nice to see
Um,
my front lawn and my back lawn. I can start to see grass now.
yeah, that's right. Well, what I think that the best thing to do is, talk about for water prevention is making sure that there's no piles of snow that have been pushed against the house or anything along that lines. We're getting to that time where Thursday is going to be plus 12. So we want to make sure that we are going to make sure that the water itself is going away from the house. And I think that just kind of prevent and protect would be the time would be right now.
Okay, and that also means maybe remove some of that harder snow that is on the roof.
Exactly. So if you have a lower pitched roof and say it's a 412, so it's kind of it's sitting there at a lower pitch, the chance of having some ice damming that over time, because our winter went up and down in temperature, you could have some buildup up underneath the shingles. So, if all of a sudden you start to see a bit of damage, whether it's in a ceiling or whether you hear a drip of some sort, you want to get that snow off the roof. It's something that basically we want the sun to hit that potential ice that may be built up under. Doesn't happen all the time, but it is something that you might be able to prevent and cause stop any further damage down the road.
And speaking of which, you talk about doing a little inspection. Look for cracks in the foundation and other places.
Yeah, we're starting to get to that point where you can walk around the house. There's not a lot of snow, and basically you can say, okay, uh, maybe it's time that we went through that time where it was like minus 31, and that it can be damaging to a house. So you start looking: is there any cracks on the exterior? Or is there any cracks on the interior? You start to look at is there any maintenance that has to be done so that you don't have any, and we're using water seepage as an example, and basically we don't want that to happen. Go down into the basement and have an inspection. Take a look at it. You want to talk about is the sump pump working? And the best way to test the sump pump to make sure, because the system is set up that the O pipe pours into a sump pump, and then you're supposed to pump that out. That's a mechanical uh, piece of equipment that's in your house. Dump a bucket of water into it and make sure that it's working. So that when the spring thaw starts to happen, that it gets that water up away from the house. Um, I was listening to something the other day that said there's still lots of snow in Algonquin Park, which means that there's going to be a lot of water coming down through the rivers, and the lakes are going to get to a certain level, which means our groundwater is going to be at a higher level. And there's certain places in town, because we are built on limestone, that you do need backflow valves. And if you don't have a backflow valve and you feel that you're in a lower part of town, it might be a good idea to reach out to the city to see if they have an incentive or a program on right now to have something installed. Because what that will do is that if the groundwater gets too high, it will prevent it from coming back into your house. So that's probably one of the best recommendations I would say for coming into spring. Yeah, the other thing is when we're talking about the exterior as well, is that downspouts, make sure that they're attached properly, because what happens in the winter is that they freeze and they can push apart. So they will actually separate without you doing anything. And you want to make sure that they're still connected, the water's not pouring down beside the house, and that you have an extension on that it gets away from the house. You want them to get to the drainage. And if you feel that your yard is saturated or it is flooded, I have seen personally storm sewers that are put into yards, and they actually run a perforated tile, and it will suck the water out of the ground, and it will pour it into a storm sewer to get it away from the house. Now, it is expensive, there's no question about it, but it will dry out your yard. So if you have that situation, it's something to consider.
You mentioned the basement. Take a look around, look at things, but also keep things off the ground. Maybe if you have important things in storage, maybe artwork.
Yeah, I grew up in a farmhouse. I mean, it's a stone foundation. It wasn't designed the way that we design things nowadays. So when you're in, the downtown, or you're in the country and you have these stone foundations, or potentially if you're built too low, you might have a water sensitive basement. So you want to make sure that things are put in totes or they're sitting on skids, and that you're checking on these things to make sure, because basements are great for storage. You just have to do it properly and make sure the dehumidifiers are on.
Always excellent advice, Matt Lee. We thank you so much. Be well and take care. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Bye.
Real estate tips brought to you by Matt Lee of Royal LePage.